Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MassBio's Forum on HR Benefits in 2021, What You Need to Know. I'm Jason Cordero, Vice President of Business Operations here at MassBio. Happy to be with everybody here today, and thank you for joining. We're joined today by folks from Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, Marsh McLennan Agency, Morgan Stanley, and Guardian. 2020 and the outbreak of the pandemic brought a lot of unforeseen challenges to the healthcare industry. But now as we enter a new year with a new administration, there is still a great deal of uncertainty surrounding the COVID-19 vaccine timeline, health insurance, and pending legislative agenda and its impact on the healthcare landscape. So today, our industry experts will focus on a number of topics, including some of the legislative updates for healthcare and HR benefits, the COVID-19 pandemic and vaccine distribution, an update on the Tufts and Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare merger, some information around the implementation of Massachusetts PFML, and we'll introduce the MassBio MEP, our 401k plan with Morgan Stanley. And we'll run through a MassBio Edge Benefits transition checklist. As you know, we've worked with our partners tirelessly over the past couple of years to build the Edge Benefits program. So toward the end of this, we are going to walk through anybody that's interested in how to take advantage of Edge Benefits with our partners. So please stay tuned for that. Next slide, please. We're joined today by George Thompson with Marsh McLennan Agency, Margaret Garrett with Guardian Life, EJ Russo with Harvard Pilgrim, and Al Hammond with Morgan Stanley. And with that, I will kick it over to George Thompson with Marsh McLennan to talk about some of the updates to benefit compliance and some federal developments. George.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you, MassBio, for the opportunity to speak with your membership today. My name's George Thompson. I'm the VP Employee Benefit ERISA Counsel with Marsh McLennan, and I support Chris Delory and his clients. Could we go to the next slide, please? Next slide. There we go. Before I get too deep into this, first of all, I want to give you my email address, which I should have put on the deck. And the email address is george.thompson@marshmma.com. In the event that a question comes to mind after we get off this call today, feel absolutely free to shoot me an email and I'll do my best to address it for you. Well, generally speaking, 2020 was head spinning in regards to employee benefits, particularly starting back in March with the passage of the CARES Act and the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And developments continued to go forward even as late as December 27th of 2020, when then President Trump signed a new Consolidated Appropriations Act into law, which provided some significant developments on the employee benefit compliance front. And today I'm going to talk about three of those items. One is the impact on what are called flexible spending accounts, FSA, and dependent care spending accounts. The second is the impact on emergency paid sick leave and the emergency extension of FMLA. Thirdly, I'll talk to you a little bit about new legislation which has a strong consumer advocacy bent in protecting patients against surprise medical billing. And then finally, I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the questions we're getting from clients about whether an employer can incent an employee to get a COVID-19 vaccine. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. Many of you probably have what are called a flexible spending account or a dependent care flexible spending account sponsored by your plan and available to your employees. And this was a significant point of frustration for employees during 2020 because of COVID. And the way the COVID-19 pandemic impacted this is one, healthcare providers who you were hoping to spend FSA dollars on to see were dominated in regards to their time attending to COVID-19 issues, or you just couldn't go visit them because of the pandemic. Similarly, on the dependent care side, many of you and your employees may have been squirreling away dollars during your paycheck contribution for dependent care FSA for childcare for your child, and then you found out that the daycare facility, for example, closed because of the pandemic as a way of a social mitigation measure. Unfortunately, what this new relief does not provide, that was signed into law in late December, is a refund of unused balances from the 2020 plan year. So folks aren't going to get their money back, but there are some additional areas of relief that could be very attractive for you to consider. Next slide, please. Here's the first one. Generally speaking, traditionally, a traditional FSA, independent care FSA, has a fixed limit of money you can carry over from year to year. And the IRS announces that during the end of a plan year. For example, the announced limit for carryover from 2020 into 2021 is $550. So if somebody had an unused balance in an FSA or dependent care of FSA of $2,000, they were looking at forfeiting a good chunk of that and only being able to carry over $550. You now, as the plan sponsor, as the employer, have the ability to amend your FSA or your dependent care FSA plan and allow employees to carry over the entire unused balance of their FSA account. So there's money that remains at the end of a plan year ending in 2020, they can carry that over into a plan year that ends in 2021. Similarly, if there's money that remains in an FSA or dependent care FSA for a plan year ending in 2021, that can be carried over into 2022. Next slide, please. Again, one of the great points of this unlimited carryover, it's a way to avoid this $550 limit. Next slide. There is no super IRS relief, if you will, in regard to how a FSA carryover will interact with a health savings account. Now, the significance of this is, under the IRS regs, if you sponsor a health savings account for your employees, if they have money that remains in a general purpose FSA, that will disqualify the employee from contributing to a health savings account. But they do have the ability to carry over FSA funds from a general purpose FSA into what's called a limited purpose FSA, and that would not disqualify an employee from contributing to a health savings account. Next slide, please. We are waiting for additional IRS guidance to make sure that any FSA carryover amount doesn't count towards an annual contribution limit for the following year. Generally speaking, although we don't have anything specific at this point in time, my informed sense is that it won't count towards an annual contribution limit. Otherwise, it would defeat the purpose of an unlimited carryover, if you will. Also, we're waiting for guidance to see if the carryover amount from one plan year to another will impact how COBRA premium is calculated for the FSA. Next slide, please. Grace periods can be extended. An FSA can now allow for a grace period of up to 12 months as opposed to 3 months for plan years ending in 2020 and or 2021. And again, the purpose of the grace period is to continue to allow folks to pay for incurred expenses. So the relief is available for both calendar year and non-calendar year flexible spending accounts and dependent care flexible spending accounts. Next slide, please. We spoke about the 12-month extension for the grace periods. No need to revisit this, so we can go to the next slide. We are waiting for additional guidance from the IRS about whether you can use both a grace period and a carryover feature during the same plan year. So we expect the IRS will address whether an FSA can adopt both the unlimited carryover feature and the extended grace period, or if it's one or the other. We still don't have that guidance. Next slide, please. There's also some great news, if you will, for former employees who terminate from you in regards to any unspent balance they may have in an FSA or a dependent care FSA. Traditionally, a former employee would have COBRA rights for any unused balances in their FSA or dependent care FSA account. But now the IRS is allowing the ability for employees who terminate in 2020 or 2021 to spend down their unused balances for qualifying medical expenses that are incurred through the end of the FSA plan year without a formal COBRA election. Next slide, please. Big piece of news. Generally speaking, when somebody makes a benefit election during open enrollment or when they're hired, the general rule is you can't change your election for 12 months. And then there's a menu under Treasury Regulation 1.125-4 that allows for changing benefit elections if certain qualifying events take place. For example, a marriage, adoption, a divorce, death, something of that nature. The IRS said that in regards to, you can also allow, plan sponsors can also allow employees to change the FSA or the dependent care election that they make without any qualifying event. So, for example, if you have an employee who's frustrated by the fact that their child care daycare provider is still closed, they have the ability to eliminate their contribution, if you will. And similarly for FSA elections as well, if employees are frustrated that they can't get to see their healthcare provider because their time is dominated by the pandemic and care for other patients, they have the ability to change their election as well to draw it down. Next slide, please. Here's a big piece of news to appreciate this. All of the forms of relief that I just spoke about do not happen automatically. They are not required of you as a matter of law. They are discretionary. So you, as the health plan sponsor and the sponsor of an FSA or a dependent care FSA account, you have the discretion as to whether you want to allow this to happen, any of these forms of relief. That's obviously a conversation you would want to have with your FSA or your dependent care FSA vendor. Also, it's going to require an amendment of your FSA or your dependent care FSA plan document. The good news is the amendment doesn't have to happen first. You can institute the new practice right away and catch up with the amendment by the end of the plan year. Next slide, please. An example is here. ABC Company maintains a calendar year FSA. If they want to amend their FSA to allow some of the forms of relief we just spoke about, they must amend it no later than December 31 of 2021 in order to permit an unlimited carryover from plan year 2020 until to the 2021 plan year. Next slide, please. All right, great. One other point before I jump into this next section, which we got a lot of questions about. You all probably appreciate that right now, working its way through Congress is a massive $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill. We do expect that there will be more employee benefit changes, compliance changes, and greater latitude for employee benefits in that new piece of legislation. And we do expect that that new legislation, once it gets through the reconciliation process in the Senate and is signed into law by President Biden, will likely impact this next topic. And this next topic is employee paid sick leave and the emergency use of FMLA. Next slide, please. Okay. Many of you probably recall that as part of the FCRA legislation, excuse me, that was passed into law last March, there was an Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act and an emergency extension of FMLA that applied to employers with fewer than 500 employees and more than 50 employees. Employers now who were subject to the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act and the emergency expansion of FMLA now have the discretion to extend those two types of paid leave from January 1 of 2021 through March 31 of 2021. Again, like the FSA and dependent care FSA developments that we discussed, this is not mandated as a matter of law. It's entirely your discretion. So the same rules, if you do decide to exercise your discretion and to allow these types of leave, the same rules that applied from April 1, 2020 to the end of December of 2020, those will remain as well. Next slide, please. Okay. An employer can also continue to claim tax credits. So again, if you're continuing to extend, you exercise your discretion as the employer to extend emergency paid sick leave and the emergency expansion of FMLA, you can still apply for a federal tax credit for that as well. Next slide, please. One thing to appreciate is that this extension doesn't grant additional time. So you don't get a whole new leave bucket of 80 hours, for example, under the emergency paid sick leave law, or a whole new 12-week period of extended time under the emergency extension of FMLA. In regards to the emergency paid sick leave law, the only bucket of time that an employee can use if you adopt this extension is the time that was unused from the April 1, 2020 to December 31st, 2020 period. So if they didn't use their entire 80 hours of paid sick leave, and you as an employer decide to extend this, all that the employee can utilize is the remaining time out of that 80-hour bucket. Similarly, for the emergency extension of FMLA, they can only use the number of weeks that were not paid from April 1 to 2020 through December 31st of 2020. And if you recall, for the rare need to use the emergency FMLA and the paid component of it, it was limited to 10 weeks of paid. And when I say rare, because that could only be used in a situation where an employee had to stay home to care for a child who could not go to school, and the employee didn't have the ability to work remotely either. Next slide, please. We're hoping that the DOL will address a number of issues that still remain outstanding in regards to the guidance. For example, will there be a refresh of new time under the emergency paid sick leave law or under the emergency expansion of FMLA? Now, having said that, we do expect that the new legislation that we anticipate President Biden will sign into law will address this. Next issue, please. Next slide. Okay, next slide. All right, I'm gonna go through this real quick. The No Surprises Act is a piece of legislation that was part of the comprehensive bill back in December that gets rid of this long overdue need to address the scourge of surprise medical billing. And these protections will take effect on January 1 of 2022. Next slide, please. What will happen now is that patients can't be balance billed for out-of-network emergency services. So if you are out of your network, your healthcare care, your PPO network, or your HMO network, and you incur emergency expenses, no more balance billing, and you won't be personally liable for that. Next slide, please. You can be balance billed if you are being treated in-network on a non-emergency basis and an out-of-network provider is needed to assist. For example, an anesthesiologist or a specific surgeon or cardiologist. Next slide, please. Also included in the No Surprise Billing Act are dispute resolution mechanisms. We can go to the next slide. So you don't have to go to court, there'll be arbitration. Okay, let me finish up with this, the COVID-19 vaccine. Next slide, please. Frequent question we're getting is, should employers incent employees? And our general position is that if an employee is not considering getting a vaccine for whatever reason it is, an incentive will probably do little to move them in regards to getting a vaccination. Next slide, please. Also, as plan sponsors, you have fiduciary responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is how much money do you spend on behalf of the health plan? And the question arises do you run afoul of your fiduciary duty as a plan sponsor and a plan manager if you're going to financially incent employees to get a COVID-19 vaccine if they were going to get it anyways? Next slide, please. It's clear that this issue of whether employers want to incent employees to get a vaccine really is an employment law issue. We encourage you to speak with an employment law attorney because it could raise issues on the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, the Rehabilitation Act as well. Next slide, please. I would also commend to you the EEOC COVID-19 website, which has some really great resources and practical FAQs that can help you as employers. For example, is Title II of the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act implicated when an employer administers a COVID-19 vaccine to employees or requires proof that they've had a vaccination? And the answer is no. So if you don't want to let somebody back into the building till they have until you have proof that they've been vaccinated, you're not violating any of these laws. Next slide, please. Similarly, asking employees to show proof of receipt of a COVID-19 vaccine is not what we call a disability-related inquiry under the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's a necessary measure, and it's consistent with job-related and business necessity and protect your business against additional risk. Next slide, please. Same point here. You can engage in pre-vaccination screenings if for a legitimate business purpose. Pre-vaccine screenings, again, questions whether the individual is considering getting the vaccine or not. Next slide, please. And again, I commend to you the EEOC website link, which I've left up here, is also, if you're serious about this, and my guess is more and more employers will at least have the conversation, but I suspect the reality will overtake the conversation that there's just not a lot of vaccine in the pipeline right now to allow individual employers other than healthcare providers and long-term care facilities to vaccinate their work population. Next slide, please. And with that, I have come up against 19 minutes and 10 seconds. So I am within my 20-minute allotment. I thank you for your time. Again, please feel free to email questions to me at george.thompson@marsh, MARSHMMA.com. Thank you, and I look forward to learning from my fellow presenters in the rest of the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, George. That was certainly some really important information. And for everybody, this video, the recording of this webinar will be on the MassBio YouTube channel. So check back if you want to look at any of those notes. So now we're going to move over to an update on the current state of the Tufts Health Plan and Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare merger. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to EJ Russo with Harvard Pilgrim. EJ.
Thank you, Jason, and good morning, everybody. We are a proud partner at Harvard Pilgrim. We're a proud partner of MassBio, and it's really a pleasure to be here today. So any opportunity we have, Jason, to speak directly to your membership, we relish that opportunity. So thank you again for organizing this. So you may have heard in recent news reports that Harvard Pilgrim and Tufts Health Plan have combined to form one organization. That is true, and the actual name of the new company will not be announced until around the spring time frame. So you may ask yourself, why did Harvard Pilgrim and Tufts Health Plan merge or combine? And so the reason is we're forming a new kind of health services organization, pushing past the status quo and the old ways of delivering health services to our members to improve affordability, increase access, and high quality care to enhance the member experience. So like many industries, scale is key. And with the combined size and strength of the two organizations together, that we're excited about the future services that we can deliver. Now, frankly, the MassBio program itself is already ahead of the curve as it relates to next generation solutions to healthcare. It can be found. This program will remain and exclusively being offered through Harvard Pilgrim. So we can go to this is the correct slide, so thank you. So you can see on this slide that the full complement of products and services being offered by the combined organizations. So it's a full complement from employer-sponsored plans all the way to Medicare plans. And so the combination increases our footprint and protects, increases our footprint and increases our product suite for our members. So the question itself is, how does the combination impact the MassBio program? And in the simplest terms, it does not. So we're still quoting these plans through Harvard Pilgrim exclusively. Harvard Pilgrim will continue to be the exclusive carrier for the MassBio program. So there's no change to the program, and will continue to be offered only through Harvard Pilgrim. So you may have heard of the enhanced benefits programs, enhanced benefits offered through the MassBio program, which we'll talk about in a few moments. And then we also have a national carrier solution through our partner, United Healthcare. Those all remain the same after this combination. So again, if you're not familiar with the product suite or enhanced benefits, I encourage you to talk to your benefits broker or visit the Edge benefits page on the MassBio website. Lots of great information to access there. But Harvard Pilgrim remains and will continue to remain a committed partner to this program for the future. Next. So Harvard Pilgrim is a mission-driven organization, so you can continue to count on Harvard Pilgrim to be a good corporate citizen and offer philanthropy throughout the community. We traditionally focus on food insecurity and veterans issues, but right now we are a malleable organization, so we want to address our needs of our community. And right now, our most recent focus, is on the education of the COVID vaccine. So it's well documented that our Black and Brown communities have been disproportionately affected by the virus. So we have made a financial commitment of $1 million to support the education, awareness, and outreach related to the vaccine, specifically targeting these communities. So if you're partnering with Harvard Pilgrim, you are partnering with a health services community, a company with a strong commitment to community. So later in the presentation, Jason's going to talk a little bit about the benefits and talk briefly about the Edge benefits program, the enhanced benefits, and what can be offered through Harvard Pilgrim. So as I mentioned before, to learn more about the program, you want to connect with your benefits broker or go on the Edge benefits website, or you can email benefits@massbio.org. That's benefits@massbio.org. And so again, just to reiterate, with the combination offering scale and additional resources to our community, but no impact to the MassBio program going forward. And I look forward to your questions at the end of the session.
Great. Thank you so much, EJ, for that informative update on the merger. And it's great to hear that Harvard Pilgrim is really putting some finances behind vaccine education. I know that MassBio and our other industry partners are focused on the same thing. It is of the utmost importance. So thank you. And now we're going to transition to an overview of the implementation of Massachusetts paid family medical leave and the impact on our member companies and the employees. So I will kick it over to Margaret Garrett with Guardian. Margaret.
Great. Thanks so much, Jason. Thanks for having me today. We can go right into the next slide. Thank you. All right, so I am going to spend my time today talking specifically about the Massachusetts Paid Family and Medical Leave Program, but I think this slide just helps give a little quick context for folks on why we're here talking about Massachusetts today and then what's going on a national scale as well. So it's no surprise to anybody that we've definitely seen growth in these programs in the last 5 or so years. And so this map just illustrates for you kind of where the activity is now, where states currently have these types of programs in place, helps understand where the little pockets are emerging, right? So there's a lot of activity over on the West Coast, also a lot of activity in the Northeast on this right now. It's just important to kind of have that knowledge, I think, as you think about like multi-state workforces becoming more and more common, especially after COVID, as well as kind of understanding just some of the regional implications for employers that have employees situated in these states. So blue are ones that already have programs in place. Green are the next ones to come up. So Massachusetts obviously just went live 1/1. So they're the newest blue state on here, but very shortly after Massachusetts comes Connecticut, and then a year later, Oregon, year after that, Colorado. So as you can see, these states are kind of continuing to implement programs pretty regularly at this point. And I think the most shocking thing on this map always is the purple states. These are all the states that are trying to implement programs. So they either have proposed legislation, maybe they have some bipartisan splits on how programs should be funded, but there's activity in these purple states as well. So if you're in one of these purple states now, or your workforce is, and you're not directly impacted by this type of legislation right now, it truly is only a matter of time. There's also a little bit of federal activity right now, especially since President Biden has taken office. There's quite a bit of interest to implement a program like this at the federal level. It's still too soon to know how that's going to play out this year, but it's something that we're tracking and everyone should kind of be aware of as well, that it's always possible at some point a federal paid program will go into place. Doesn't mean that these various state programs will go away. Some of them will have richer requirements likely. So it will, be a situation like an FML type law that maybe extends some paid protections, but then some of these state plans still in place. So as you can tell, just from talking about that very quickly, it's quite a complex landscape. And I know a lot of you on the phone probably already understand some of the administrative complexities that come up when we talk about these types of leaves. All right, we can go right into the next slide. I'm going to spend a few minutes doing a quick overview and recap of the Massachusetts program, and then I'm going to share just some learnings and some things that we're already hearing. So I won't spend a ton of time on the specific details, but these slides, hopefully will help all of you just serve as a reference point in the coming weeks and months if you get questions. But structurally, the Massachusetts program is set up to cover two main types of leave. So there's family leave, which is leave for an employee to take time off to care for somebody else. And in that bucket, there are a few different types of paid family leave. So employees can take time off to bond with a new child after birth, foster, or adoption. They can care for a sick family member. They can take time off for qualifying military exigencies, similar to the FMLA. And they can also take time off to care for a service member who's been injured in the line of duty. And so you can see there's a little bit of duration variance, but the majority of the PFL leaves afforded under the Massachusetts program are 12 weeks a year that an employee can take time off for. One little caveat here, so care for a sick family member, that piece of the program actually goes live 7/1 of this year. Every other piece was 1/1, so just something important to keep track of there if your employees are already asking about that type of leave. The other bucket under the program is medical leave, which is leave for an employee to take time off for their own serious health condition, akin to like a short-term disability type coverage. And employees under the Massachusetts program can take 20 weeks a year for their own medical condition. And then there's an overall combined maximum. So an employee can never take more than 26 weeks per year under this program, regardless of what combination of leave types they need to access. So in terms of how the program's funded, it's a percentage of an employee's payroll. So 0.75% right now of an employee's wages, capped at the Social Security maximum. So the Social Security Administration just made their 2021 adjustment. So that 132.9 is actually a little higher now, and that will keep getting adjusted every year. But the state, has access to that information, or your private carrier if you're using one, and they'll help you kind of with your billing accordingly. But so that cost, generally, some of it's allocated for the medical leave, some of it's allocated for the family leave. There's some shared cost scenarios that can come up where the employee, is generally responsible for a portion of that for the medical leave, and then all of it for the family leave. But an employer can always take on some or all of that employee cost for folks if they want to go that route as well. And then the state does have a special rule. Employers that have less than 25 Massachusetts employees don't have to pay that employer portion of the medical leave that they would normally be required to pay. It's essentially waived. And it was just a decision that the state made to kind of give a little boost to smaller employers. All right, we can go to the next slide, please. So in terms of the benefit and what employees are actually getting when they utilize this type of leave, the benefit calculation can replace up to 80% of an employee's wages. You can see here, it's a little bit of a convoluted calculation, so I won't make anyone do math today. There is a nice benefit calculator on the state website, but I think the general gist of it is that your employees that have lower salaries are going to get that 80% income replaced. And then as your employee workforce goes up in salary, less a percentage of their income is replaced under the program. There's a 7-day waiting period under the program. So employees have to have their medical condition or need for leave meet 7 calendar days before that payment starts. And there's an overall maximum weekly benefit of $850 a week. So regardless of an employee's salary, they can never get more than that per week under the program. Last point on this slide quickly is just this definition of covered family member. It's really important for folks to think about because this is who an employee can take leave off to care for under the PFL bucket we talked about. Everything in blue I've highlighted is more expansive than the FMLA. So you can see that there's a lot of opportunity for employees to take family leave under this program, grandparents, grandchildren, siblings, stepchildren, things like that. So it's just something to be aware of from an educational perspective, because you're going to have situations in particular workforces where an employee may be eligible for Massachusetts paid family and medical leave, but not an FML qualified leave. So that's just something that folks need to be aware of. All right, you can go to the next slide, please. This slide just outlines who is eligible, who needs the coverage. I would just say generally that if you have employees that work in Massachusetts and they meet the financial eligibility tests of unemployment, and so you pay unemployment tax for those individuals in Massachusetts, they need the Massachusetts PFML coverage as well. It's the same financial eligibility test, which is kind of nice in some ways. It simplifies that analysis for folks. But if you as an employer have Massachusetts employees that meet that test, even if it's just one, you need to provide that coverage to those employees. It's mandatory, and employees can't kind of pick and choose whether they want it. Just to end with a couple special rules here that come up a lot. We get a lot of questions on. There's no pre-existing condition exclusion under the program. It's coming up a lot already right now as we enter kind of the infancy stages of claim payments. So if an employee had a medical condition last year, you need to access benefits this year for it, and it's ongoing, they can do that. Even if they had a baby last year and they're still within that 1 year of birth, adoption, or foster placement, they can access the bonding as well. Private carrier exemptions are allowed. I think everyone on the call probably knows that at this point, but there was a choice to make last year for employers, right, to either extend this coverage to their employees through the state program or to use a private carrier. And I would just say here, that decision doesn't have to be final for folks. If there were people who opted into the state plan for 1/1, and they're now thinking about kind of looking toward a private carrier for their coverage and kind of consolidating their coverages, they are still able to do that. The state is reviewing and approving private plan applications on a quarterly basis. All right, I think I have one slide left. I just wanted to spend a quick moment talking specifically about maternity and bonding leave claims, because when we look at kind of early questions and early claim incidents, we're already seeing that this is the #1 reason that folks are using leave under the Massachusetts program. And it's no surprise, we saw that play out in New York and other PFML states. Anywhere between 80 to 90% of claims filed under these types of programs are generally for new babies. So I just wanted to quickly on this slide answer a couple of questions that come up a lot and just help dispel some of the myths around maternity leave and how that looks like under the program. And so the biggest thing I'll hit here is just that if a woman goes out and needs medical leave for postpartum recovery, she can access the medical leave benefits under the Massachusetts program first. And so at the same time, she would be getting a short-term disability payment. And that doesn't impact her overall ability to take bonding under the program after that. So you can have women that get 6 or 8 weeks of medical leave for that postpartum recovery timeframe, and then can transition right into the 12 weeks of bonding. So that's not precluded, and that's something again that we get a lot of questions on. I think there's just some overall confusion. So that's the way the program is structured. But also people, so fathers, same-sex partners, other parents can also take bonding leave for new child placement, birth, or foster care at any point during the 12 months after the child enters their home. So that's, where we transition to that PFL bucket. So 12 weeks available there to any parent of the child, and they can take that intermittently or continuously. And again, no pre-existing condition limits apply. So as long as that baby's been born, adopted, or placed in a family's care within 12 months, that leave can be used this year, even if the baby came last year. So hopefully that answers a lot of the early questions that folks on this call are getting on bonding as well, because again, it comes up so much. So I, like George, am happy to take any follow-up questions. I know we don't have a lot of time for Q&A today, but if any go in the chat window, or Jason, you get any in follow-up, feel free to shoot them to me. I'm happy to provide any more updates on the Massachusetts program, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Margaret. I think We do have time for one quick question. We have Mass PFML and disability. What happens if you change carriers on 1/1 and have people on claim?
So that's a great question. So I'm assuming that means like you had a prior STD carrier, you changed to somebody new for 1/1 and started your Massachusetts coverage there. If there are open short-term disability claims, your prior carrier is going to keep those and pay those out, like you would normally see when you switch short-term disability coverage. That Massachusetts coverage that gets established with your new carrier, that will be the carrier you'll have to use to initiate any Massachusetts claims. So there could be a month or two of a little bit awkward time frame where if you have a rollover condition, that employee could have a medical Massachusetts medical leave claim with the new carrier, and the old STD claim is still phasing out. So that's unfortunate, but over time, and when we get into the next month or so, things should sync up well, and then you would just use your new carrier ongoing for all new claims.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Well, that's great stuff from Guardian. Thank you for the update on the Mass PFML. And we're going to transition over to talk a little bit about our MEP, our multi-employer 401k plan, where our industry is coming together to offer a better plan for our members. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Al Hammond with Morgan Stanley.
Great, thanks, Jason. Nice to be here with everyone and kind of kick off Morgan Stanley's relationship. My name's Al Hammond. I'm an institutional consulting director with Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley's been associated with MassBio for the last 2 years supporting, and we've been working on creating this multiple employer plan, which we're going to talk today. So I want to talk just a little bit about the challenges and opportunities that we're looking at moving forward, as well as the multiple employer plan. So if we go to the next slide. I think most people are aware that there's been retirement challenges. And so we look at it as access and education. And so if you look across the United States, approximately 50% of small businesses don't offer retirement plans. In addition, within that 50%, only about 30% of the participants of that 50% are using the plan. And so if you look at just pure access, it's limited. And as far as having employees engaged, it really comes down to education. And as we look in the biotech industry, this actually runs through even in this industry as well. As we had conversations back when we were live with the Evening of Possibilities back a couple of years ago, we had many conversations with members of the MassBio community. And quite frankly, a lot of them didn't offer retirement plans. And even kind of the more mid-sized companies, they had concerns regarding the costs associated with it, and really truly offering a full benefit that really is competitive in this environment. If you go on to the next page. So what we did was we marshaled all the resources of MassBio, and similar to some of the other programs, we're able to bring everybody together to produce a better retirement plan. And effectively what we do is, if you can picture this, is that on creating a retirement plan, we push all the difficult tasks up to the MassBio level. So all the filings, the fiduciary responsibilities, in essence, that goes up to the MassBio level, and we work in a fiduciary level with them. Then down at the adopting employers, all the member companies, they still have the opportunity to create their own retirement plan and customize it to their needs. So it's really getting the best of both worlds as far as getting a competitive retirement benefit at a very cost-effective pricing, while still having control and customization to meet the needs of your employees. So let's just look into it a little bit in detail here if we go on to the next page. So we put this matrix together really to kind of capture some of this stuff. So first, attract and retain employees. Biotechnology is an incredibly competitive environment. You're up against big pharma companies, you're up against academia, and quite frankly, just other technology companies. And so we want to have an opportunity where we can give you a benefit that can help you attract and retain employees. It's very easy to adopt. The pricing, as we said, is very, very attractive. As we've met with a number of member companies, we're able to save anywhere from 30 to 50% on the current cost that your participants are bearing. So again, this is making it much more attractive to you at a participant level. The feedback we've gotten from people, HR heads and people in finance, is that they want design flexibility. Again, it's nice to be a part of a program like this and get a cost-effective opportunity, but it's also, we need to meet the needs of our employees and the economic situation of our company. And so plan design flexibility stays with you as a company. You're able to outsource tremendous amounts of the administration. So again, we're giving up people hours and capturing them back to you. And so again, that's a kind of a quiet savings that occurs. Then if you look in regards to fiduciary responsibilities, when you offer a retirement plan, it comes with fiduciary responsibilities. So we're able to reduce the risk on you fiduciary-wise, both on investment-wise and on administrative. And again, when you're looking at the small to mid-sized market, having a dedicated relationship manager, both on investments, education, and administration, that's something that generally doesn't exist. In this program, it will exist. Audit is another issue. Again, we said that gets pushed back up to the MassBio level. We take audit off of your plate. So again, making things easier. But I think if you get back into some of the core actions, so again, it's a competitive retirement offering. Now we get into, at the participant level, offering financial wellness. And so we're going to be having other presentations going on in depth on wellness, but this is really an ability to make this retirement plan benefit come alive, as well as looking at the broader financial concerns that your participants have. And so again, this is something that in small and mid-sized markets, we don't really see. And so we're really excited about the partnership. We're rolling out this program, and we're looking to speak with more of you on a one-on-one basis. So we will be getting more information out to you that you can contact, speak with us directly, and see how we can make this benefit work for your company. Back to you, Jason.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Al. And it is a tremendous benefit for our members, both the employer, the member company, and the employees, that we really are excited to bring to market. So I just want to talk a little bit about Edge Benefits and what we offer with our partners that we have here today. This really is a forum for education to help our membership understand, but we don't want to overlook the fact that we do have partners here that have been working tirelessly to bring enhanced benefits and cost savings to our membership. So as EJ had mentioned, really work with your broker, your existing broker, to talk about what this program looks, the Edge Benefits program looks like with Harvard Pilgrim for these 50 plus large group companies. We're going to save a significant amount of money and really increase the benefits for your employees. Guardian has done a lot of work for dental ancillary products, including PFML plans here. And Morgan Stanley, as you just heard from Al, is building the MUP plan, and we are excited about all these things. So ask your broker about it. Go to edge-benefits.org or email edgebenefits@massbio.org to learn more. We'll kick over to the next slide. Just really want to talk about something just very briefly. Again, this will all be online, available afterwards. But what does a transition in health plan look like? You can see on the list here, you follow these steps. We've had great response from the members that have jumped into the Edge Benefits plan with Harvard Pilgrim. And really the key here is that Harvard Pilgrim is putting their weight behind our industry. They're committed to MassBio and our members. And you can use their Smart Start program that will get these our member companies transitioned over efficiently and effectively. And next slide. So here's what the Smart Start plan looks like. It really just makes everything easier. You have a direct access. As I mentioned, Harvard Pilgrim is committed to helping our members specifically, and certainly you have the support of our organization. And our goal really with all of these things is to help our members extend their dollars, continue to drive innovation rather than spending money unnecessarily on other benefits. So it helps us to stay competitive and keep our employees happy and make sure Massachusetts is the best place in the world for the life sciences. And the last slide before we take some questions. Again, take a look at this. This is how you find out about any of the things that we spoke about today, including calling your current broker. So with that, we will open it up to any questions. We have about 5 minutes left here. All right, so I think we do not have any questions right now, but again, this is how you contact us. You know, some of our presenters here are open as well for any emails. Feel free to reach out to them, but that is going to wrap it up for our presentation today. Thank you guys all for joining, and we hope to see you in the future. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thank you.